The first thing I remember is the sound of water in my ears, and then the taste of salt in my mouth, and then pain everywhere at once. I was lying face down on wet sand, and my whole body felt like it had been slammed against a wall 100 times. I pushed myself up on shaking arms and looked around. Behind me, smoke was rising from a piece of twisted metal, half buried in the surf. That was my escape pod, or what was left of it. I did not remember much about the crash itself. 1 second, the transport ship I was on had been shaking apart around me, alarms screaming, and the next second, I was here, wherever here was. I did not know if anyone else from my ship had survived. I did not even know if my ship still existed. I stood up slowly and looked at the sky, and that was when I understood something was very wrong. The sky was a pale lavender color, streaked with thin clouds that moved too fast. 2 small moons hung low near the horizon, pale and round like coins. The trees behind the beach were tall and silver-barked, with leaves shaped like long ribbons that moved even though there was no wind. This was not my planet. I took a breath, told myself to stay calm, and started walking. My training had taught me that panic gets people killed faster than almost anything else, so I focused on small tasks. Find fresh water, find shelter, figure out where I was. I did not get very far. I heard them before I saw them, a soft rustling in the tall grass on both sides of the path I was walking. Then they stepped out, and I froze. They were tall, taller than me, with skin that had a faint silver sheen under the strange purple light of the sky. Their eyes were sharp and alert, and every one of them held a weapon, something like a spear made of dark metal that hummed faintly with energy. There were 6 of them, and every single one was aiming at me. They were also, without question, women, warriors, from the way they moved and stood, but women all the same. I raised both my hands slowly, palms open, the universal sign for I mean no harm. I'm not a threat, I said, keeping my voice calm and even. My ship crashed. I just need help. None of them answered. One of them, the tallest, studied me carefully, her eyes moving from my torn flight suit to the burn marks on my arm to my face. She said something to the others in a language I did not understand, sharp and quick, and 2 of them moved to flank me, while a third took my arm and pulled me forward. I did not resist. There was no point. 6 armed strangers on an alien beach was not a fight I was going to win, and honestly, I did not want to fight anyone. I just wanted to find out where I was, and whether I was going to survive the day. They marched me inland, through the silver forest, until we came out into a wide valley, and that was when I saw the city. It rose up from the valley floor, in terraces, buildings made of pale stone that seemed to glow faintly gold in the afternoon light. There were gardens everywhere, and fountains, and everywhere I looked, I saw women, working, talking, walking through the streets, standing guard on the walls. I did not see a single man anywhere. They took me to a large building at the center of the city, up a long set of stairs, and into a hall with high ceilings and tall windows. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat a woman who could only be their leader. She was not young, but she carried herself with a kind of quiet authority that made the whole room feel smaller around her. Her hair was silver white, braided back from her face, and her eyes were the same sharp gold as the guards who had captured me. She studied me for a long moment before she spoke, and to my surprise, she spoke in broken but understandable words of my own language. "You come from the sky," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," I said. "My ship crashed near your shore. I mean no harm to your people. I only want to survive, and, if possible, find a way to signal for rescue." She rose from her seat and walked slowly down the steps toward me, studying me the way someone studies a strange animal they have never seen before. "We have old stories," she said, "of a world called Earth and of men who once lived there. We believed these stories were only legend, passed down from the ones who built this colony many generations ago, before the sky ships stopped coming and the old knowledge was lost. Tell me, stranger, are the stories true?" "They're true," I said. "I'm from Earth. Or at least, my family has been for a long time. It's a long story." She looked at me for a long moment, and something shifted behind her eyes, something that looked almost like hope, quickly hidden again. "My name is Kethra," she said. I am the first voice of this island. You will understand, stranger, that a man appearing on our shore is not a small thing. Our laws are old, and they are strict. We must decide what is to be done with you. I did not love the sound of that, but I kept my voice steady. What are the choices? There are three, she said. You may be judged unworthy and sent away to the outer rocks, where you will not survive long. You may be judged dangerous and held here under guard for the rest of your days, or, and here she paused, studying me carefully, you may be judged worthy, though this has not happened in my lifetime. And how do you judge that? I asked. By what you do next, she said, not by what you say. I did not know it then, but that sentence would end up mattering more than almost anything else she told me. They kept me in a guarded room for 2 days, not unkind, but not free either. Food was brought to me, simple and good, mostly fruit and grains I did not recognize but that tasted fine. On the third day, a storm rolled in off the sea, the worst I had seen since I arrived. The wind screamed against the stone walls of the city, and I could hear shouting outside, urgent and afraid. My guard for that shift was a younger woman named Sira, quieter than the others, who had been kind to me in small ways, bringing extra water, answering a few of my questions in careful, halting words. When the storm hit its worst, an alarm bell began to ring across the city, and I saw real fear cross her face for the first time. What's happening? I asked. The lower terraces, she said. The water wall is breaking. Children are there. The little one's hall. I did not think. I just moved. I pushed past her before she could stop me, out into the storm, following the sound of the alarm bell down through the terraced streets toward the lower part of the city. The rain was so heavy I could barely see, but I could hear it, a deep groaning sound of stone and water fighting each other, and I could see people running, carrying children, shouting instructions I could not understand. There was a stone wall along the lowest terrace, built to hold back the sea during storms, and a section of it had cracked. Water was pouring through in a widening gap, and behind that wall was a long building where, I would later learn, the youngest children of the city were kept safe during the day. I did not have any special alien strength. I did not have a weapon or a magic device. What I had was training from a different kind of emergency, back on ships that sometimes flooded or lost pressure, and a mind that had been taught to look for the fastest way to stop water from getting somewhere it should not be. I grabbed loose stone and timber from a nearby collapsed structure and started jamming it into the widening crack, using my whole body as a brace against the pressure of the water. It was not elegant. It was not heroic in the way stories make it sound. It was cold and hard, and my hands were bleeding within minutes from the sharp edges of broken stone. But slowly, other hands joined mine. Sira, then 2 more guards, then a dozen more people, working together in the rain, packing the crack with stone and cloth, and anything they could find, until the flow of water slowed to a trickle instead of a flood. By the time the storm passed, the wall was holding, and the children's hall was safe. I sat down hard on the wet stone afterward, exhausted, my hands stinging, and looked up to see Kethra standing over me, her expression unreadable in the gray light after the storm. You could have run, she said quietly. Back to your room. No one would have blamed you. I know, I said. Why didn't you? I thought about it for a moment before I answered, because I wanted to give her an honest answer, not a clever one. Because I could help, I said. And when you can help, and you don't, that's a choice too. I didn't want to make that choice. She looked at me for a long time after that, and something in her face had changed, softened, though her voice stayed steady. That, she said, is the answer I was waiting for. Over the days that followed, things were different. I was no longer guarded like a prisoner. I was given real work, first small tasks, then larger ones, helping repair the seawall properly, showing them a few tricks from my own training about how to reinforce stone structures against water pressure. I learned their names, their customs, the reasons behind their strict laws about outsiders, which came from an old and painful history of raiders who had once tried to take the island by force, long before Kethra's time. I spent more and more time with Kethra herself, and I found that behind her careful authority was a sharp sense of humor and a deep, tired love for her people that she rarely let anyone see. We argued about small things and laughed about smaller things, and somewhere in those weeks, without either of us quite deciding to, we became something more than stranger and judge. The final test came without warning, weeks later, when scouts spotted a raiding ship on the horizon, the same old threat that had shaped the island's harsh laws in the first place. The city prepared for a fight, and I prepared with them, not because anyone commanded me to, but because by then, this place had started to feel like something worth protecting. I will not pretend the day of the raid was easy. It was frightening and loud, and there were moments I was certain it would go badly for all of us. But between the island's own trained warriors and the few tricks I brought from a very different kind of training, we held the shore, and the raiders turned back before real harm was done to anyone. That night, the whole city gathered in the great hall, and Kethra stood before them and told them, in their own language, what I had done since the day I washed up on their beach. Then she turned to me and switched back to my language, so I would understand every word. Our old laws say that any outsider found worthy shall be crowned as a king beside our first voice, she said. Not to rule over us, not to command us, but to stand beside us, as one of our own. I looked out at the faces in that hall, faces that had been afraid of me once, and were not afraid anymore. I'm not here to rule anyone, I said. I never wanted a crown. I just wanted to help, because that's what needed doing. Kethra smiled, the first full smile I had seen from her since I arrived. That, she said, is exactly why you will wear one. They placed a simple circle of pale silver metal on my head that night, not heavy, not grand, but real. And as the whole hall cheered, I found myself thinking that somewhere out there, far beyond that strange lavender sky, my old ship's rescue beacon might still be sending out a signal, waiting for someone to come find me. And for the first time since I had woken up on that beach, I was not entirely sure I wanted them to.